Cons of Reddit: what's the worst thing that happened to you whilst doing your time? Serious. 12 months on the inside. Very first day in prison. Very first day, I was in line for supper and this big guy comes up behind me, squeezes my butt and whispers in my ear, "Are your panties wet?" Scared crapless I turned around, and the guy jumped back and said in a friendly tone, "Oh, my mistake mate, thought you were someone else," and left the line. I suppose seeing people getting taken advantage of all of the time, and then not caring was the worst. New guys coming in and getting ripped off on trades and stuff. People with social/developmental issues just getting their food taken from them. Also, the psychology of people without goals gets weird. What was worst was just becoming part of that world. There are so many people there that have their rights taken away from them on a regular basis and don't care anymore. They choose to place value on being able to make others fear them. They stop thinking about the world beyond the walls and just get all wrapped up in the weird culture of the place. There was a day I was feeling proud of myself because I was running around organizing contraband trades, setting up poker games, and owning things like hardcover books and the only dice in the place. In that moment of pride I realized I had started to lose my mind. It's honestly hard to remember the months in there because most of the time nothing's freaking happening. Nothing. You've read until you can't stand it. You've slept all you can. You can't play cards cause your celly is sleeping. So you stare at the ceiling and wait. It's so weird to realize you're doing the equivalent of time out for months. You're not waiting for 5 minutes. Not waiting 5 hours. You're waiting for a day that is months away. Just waiting. TL, doctor, it's like being in a DMV with a bunch of assholes, and your number isn't up until next January. My family came to visit me on Christmas Day the first year I was in. I was so ashamed that I had a little breakdown the next day and punched the cinder block wall inside my cell. One of the guards invited me to come talk to him. I made the mistake of thinking he was a friend and was talking about the meaning of life and why things happened. He decided he thought I was suicidal, which I wasn't. The next day I was shipped off to a maximum security prison in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, stripped down naked and given a Kevlar smock to wear. They keep the temperature down at 60 degrees, which means that you have to stay huddled in a corner to conserve body heat. Because this was observation, I wasn't allowed to have anything. Nothing to read, watch, etc. Naked and cold for an entire week. If you'd like to see what this is like, turn your thermostat down, then take all your clothes off, and sleep on the floor of your bathroom with the light on for 6 days straight. No showering either. Wasn't offered a chance to clean myself. That's how I spent New Year's 2007. Observation is not some kind of psychological treatment. It's punishment and mental torture. Sleeping and singing to yourself is all you can do. Too cold to do anything else. Fucking brutal. Now I try to go out of the country for New Year's Eve every year. I am sorry that was your experience. But that prison gave me one of the most powerful moments of my college career. I went to college on the other side of the hill from 2007 to 2012. You mostly forgot the prison was there, since there was no reason to go out that way in the city. Me and 2 friends has a late-night Thursday radio show at the campus radio station. We mostly used to practice scratching, turntablism, and mixing and other nonsense DJ things and play the music me liked, disco, old school house, Detroit techno. Every Thursday for 2 years. Then our group started to land house parties and bar gigs, and we stopped playing every Thursday. One day, after taking about a month off, a month of dead air for 3 hours every Thursday, we got a letter at the radio for us. Both addressed from that particular prison. It turns out that this person was worried something had happened to us. If we had given up hope that people listened or worse. The letter was sincere and thoughtful. We traded correspondence a few more times before he stopped responding. I have no idea what happened. We didn't miss a week after that until we graduated. He even became a sort of folk hero for us. That prisoner completely changed my sheltered middle-class mind on what it means to be an inmate. 8 months inside, and one instance always sticks out in my mind. I was running out of phone minutes and spending what precious time I had left talking to my child. We didn't get to talk as much as I liked, had unfortunately more important people to talk to, lawyers, trying to find jobs for my release, etc. This idiot comes up, "I need the phone." Hold on man, I only got a couple minutes left. He takes the phone and slammed it into the shitty payphone holster and abruptly hung up on my daughter. Still breaks my heart because I cherish every minute I can have with her. The first day I was assigned to a new unit after being sentenced, DUI, 90 days, I got put in a 5-man cell. It wasn't my first time locked up and had been in the jail a few weeks, so I wasn't too nervous. The guys were cool to me all evening, all 4 had done time before in much worse prisons. They were all playing cards and I didn't know the game, so I sat on my bunk reading. They started off saying weird cryptic gay stuff, random stuff regarding Vaseline and who was cute on the block, etc. It ramps up over the course of an hour, then they start playing strip poker. Meanwhile I've been hearing every word they say and studiously ignoring it. They got bored of being subtle and began saying awful stuff about freaking each other in the butt. I ignore everything, while secretly getting scared shitless they're going to do something to me. Eventually all four got up, shirtless, and they trapped me on my top bunk and started grabbing at me. I yelled, "What the frick?" And they collapsed in laughter and spent the next 48 hours telling everyone who'd listen. My cellmate put jam in my shoes the morning of my release. Oh, and when I first got there they accidentally entered me into the system twice, giving me 2 prisoner IDs, only one of which worked, and put all my money and post on the other one. Didn't sort this out till I finished my sentence months later. Thing that happened to me, but it's something I observed while in. My life was uneventful in my time, which was only about 4 months, and only during nights because I had multiple releases. Anyway, our jail was divided into sides and floors. The higher up you were, the worse of an offender you were. 1 leader was the floor with the men with releases or protective custody, 1R was women. Up through 5R and L, which were serious, violent offenders. 1 leader was 12 individual cells, ~5'X8, surrounded by a larger cage, 1 TV in the dead middle. Our floor got the new arrivals who mostly, myself included for the first 2 months, had to sleep on rubber mats on the floor. One day a young black man whom I knew from childhood was moved onto our floor. He'd been in the system since about 12. He had finally been granted work release. The guards hated him. All the guards were white. They didn't pull any punches. This was the year 2000. He was about 19 at this time. The night they moved him in was uneventful. The next morning, his release was for 6 a.m., to be at work at a restaurant at 6:30. The overnight guard was an asshole who loved doing things like dropping our food or releasing us late or holding us for an extra inspection or whatever. That morning, he was too busy to let this inmate out until 9 a.m. Our only phone was collect, and he did, for whatever reason, turn it off that morning so none of us could use it. Kid finally gets out, his ride still waiting, and beats feet to work. They actually let him work till noon, at which point he came immediately back like he was supposed to, during which time they made him sit in the sally port for about 5 hours without food, water, or bathroom. So he gets in, after dinner, and goes back to his cell, pretty dejected but not being bad or disrespectful. The next morning, they do the same thing. He gets to work and the manager can't do much but fire him, so he comes straight back to work and calls his PO on the way, and she calls the jail to tell them that he won't need his release the next day. So he comes back on the floor, and pretty much immediately gets on the phone with his lawyer and family trying to find a new job. Cue the big fat guard bitch. She comes walking down the floor, outside the second cage, laughing, saying something like, "How was work, X?" To which he responds, "You know how it was." And she, and I swear to God she said this, says something like, "Shoulda known a lazy man wouldn't get to work on time. Looks like you're going back upstairs with the rest of the monkeys." We're all kind of appalled that she'd say that, and we're all white dudes. So he says something like, "Don't you have anything better to do?" Which was of course what she was hoping for. "Lockdown," she says loudly, which is where we all go back to our cages or our mats. We all abide. She gets on her walkie and says her close first left and locks us all in, 3 hours before normal time. He says something like, "You ain't gotta take it out on all these dudes, they didn't do nothing," and she says, "Shut up, inmate. On your knees." Now you have to remember that she's 6 feet in front of him, and none of us can see because we're all in our cages. Only the cage next to him can see her really because he's in the last cell. So she starts screaming at him, calling him names, making fun of him, nasty stuff. So, he calls her a bitch or something. She pulls at her can of fricking bear spray, giant pepper spray can, and just hoses him down, and the rest of us, by proximity. Then she calls in the response team, which is just one dude and his dog, and they haul the kid out, not fighting, in cuffs and drag him away, leaving the rest of us to wheeze on pepper spray for the rest of the night. That was one story. I can tell you about the guy with the wheelchair, or the littering guy, or lots of stuff. Thanks everyone for your comments. I didn't expect this to get this big. I feel like I've had a pretty wild life and I love talking about the crazy things I've done. 8X Felon Eagle Scout EMT with SAR dogs? Okay, I've worked in youth residential group homes, worked as a counselor, taught public school, had to restrain lots of folks, been stabbed by students, Been deposed for very technical ADA-related issues in big lawsuits, seen some crazy abuse, and I'm happy to share about all of it because I think our stories should all be shared. For the record, I was originally charged with 28 felonies and something like 15 misdemeanors for BAMP-E. Effectively, the DA took every single unsolved BAMP-E from the previous year and charged me with it. We couldn't afford the $10,000 my lawyer wanted to go to trial. That was after the $10,000 he charged just to represent me, so we took a plea bargain of 8 felonies in 3 groups, all BAMP-E. I was supposed to receive 1 to 10 years in the state pen for each one, but the judge realized that things weren't what they seemed, and instead grouped the charges and sentenced me to 3 to 30, suspended it, and gave me 6 months in county with releases for work, school, and community service, so I pretty much just spent the night in jail for 4 to 5 months. Really lucky and really not too bad. I won't say that I was innocent, but I also won't say that I was remotely guilty of what I was charged with or what I pled guilty to. My PO, that's another whole series of stories, decided I was the poster child for reform and had me speak to her interns about recidivism and corrections, and then for an unknown reason decided I was bad and tried 3 times to revoke my probation, all unsuccessfully. I graduated with a 3.7 overall GPA in 2003. Did 3.5 years in Texas prisons. I believe that the worst story I can recall was my first full day in a state jail facility, used as a transition center for up to 2 years before one is sent to a real prison in Texas. A guy came up to me asking if I smoke cigarettes. I didn't, but thought, why not? So he told me to head to the gym when that time came later that afternoon. We went to the gym and fired up a cigarette while we walked around the basketball court. As we were walking around the court, we approached the universal gym machine where a variety of people were using the various pieces to work out. The guy who offered me the cigarette advised me to follow him to the other side of the basketball court and to stay away from the universal gym. A few minutes later a guy sat down and leaned back to do some bench press when 4 guys grabbed him, 1 on each arm and 1 on each leg. 2 other guys pull out cans of chili, or refried beans as both were available, in socks and proceed to hammer the guy in the face. The guy at the bench press had his face completely caved in. All I could think was, what have I gotten myself into? I also recall one other time when I was at the pre-release facility at the Beto unit where a guy had his face cut up with a box cutter and his throat slit over $20. The guy who died even had about $40 worth of cigarettes on him when he died. I never had anything happen to me directly per se. There were a few fights I got into over various things, usually just respect. Now I am just rambling. Did 3 weeks in county for basically being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I had just turned 18 and had never been in trouble, not even in school. I was interrogated in a small room by a huge undercover agent, with a stash, who told me that they knew I was the ringleader and that he would make it his personal mission to see that I spent the rest of my life in jail. Did not know any details, so I said nothing. When I was put in a cell, my cellmate was a 6'2" bald Mexican gangster guy, and every night he would loudly masturbate while I clinched my thin bed sheets in fear, not sleeping until I knew for sure I no longer heard him. I was released for lack of evidence. Good times. That's it for today, Team Astro. Have you ever had any similar stories like this? If you have, please let us know down in the comments section. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos. Please consider liking and sharing this video and support us. Daily fun facts before you leave: a single cloud can weigh more than 1 million pounds. Alright, bye.